Welcome. I'm Doug Morgan, and you're listening to Uncommon Sense, where we hunt for the truth in the topics you're not supposed to talk about, Christianity and politics. We were lied to. We were lied to about Joe Biden and his health. We were lied to about Joe Biden and his health by liberal leaders and the media. Now the propaganda media is saying that they didn't lie to us or cover anything up. They were just grossly incompetent. Yeah. Well, from an opinion piece from Matt Walsh and the Daily Wire, he says that a hallmark of the late Soviet period was that no one actually knew who was running the country. Leonid Brezhnev, who supposedly ordered the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan, could barely speak in public. There was a concerted effort by the Politburo to hide his decline to the extent that they could. And by the final few years, it was clear that Brezhnev wasn't actually making any decisions at all. And then when Brezhnev finally died in 1982, he was replaced by Yuri Andropov, who, from the moment he took office, was suffering from severe kidney failure that often led to his complete incapacitation. Of course, that fact wasn't disclosed to anyone at the time. But after Andropov died, a little over a year into his term, the Soviets released medical files revealing that he had been on dialysis practically the whole time that he was in office. At that point, Andropov was replaced by someone named Konstantin Chernenko, and you can probably guess how that went. For his part, Chernenko was also suffering from debilitating health problems, including heart failure and emphysema. From the moment he took over, and once again, these problems were hidden, at least until he died while in office after 13 months on the job. And once again, in those 13 months, he spent a lot of his time in the hospital, unable to perform his duties. Yes, the Soviet Union style cycled through three mostly, unaccountable, incapacitated leaders in rapid succession, all while hiding their respective conditions from the public. You don't need to be a student of history to know how that worked out or what happened to the Soviet Union a few years later. Everything collapsed. For many years, it's gone without saying that in this country, we don't want to emulate the Soviet model of governance. Instead of being governed by a shadowy Politburo or a unelected bureaucracy of some kind, we've always understood that it's critically important to have a competent, healthy president at the head of the federal government. That's why members of the cabinet, as well as members of Congress, have a constitutional duty to remove the president if, during his term, he becomes incapable of serving. It's also why White House doctors release regular reports about the health of the president. Any effort to subvert this model of transparency, to revert to a Soviet style of governance where no one knows who's in charge, can only be interpreted in one way. It's an act to undermine and ultimately destroy the foundations of this country, just as the Soviet Union was destroyed. And the people responsible for any kind of effort like that should be imprisoned as traitors to this country, because that's exactly what they are. During Joe Biden's presidency, we've known for some time that his handlers were hiding some of the most dramatic evidence of his mental decline. As egregious as this cover-up was, it wasn't entirely effective because people could still observe many signs of Joe Biden's decline in public. What we didn't know until just the other day is that Biden's handlers were almost certainly hiding another very important piece of information, which is that Joe Biden was also suffering from terminal stage 4 prostate cancer that spread to his bones, an aggressive cancer that will almost certainly kill him in a matter of years, if not sooner. In other words, it's the kind of disease that if Joe Biden had been elected in November, would almost certainly mean that Kamala Harris would be installed as the president of the United States. And there's very good reason to believe that they hid Joe Biden's diagnosis from the public in an attempt to secure exactly that outcome. It's just impossible to believe that Joe Biden went from a perfectly clean bill of health, which his doctors provided just last year in 2024, to having stage 4 cancer in a matter of 6 months. Pretty much every expert in the field unanimously is unanimous on this point. For example, News Nation just spoke to urologist named David Schulsterman. Schulsterman pointed out that the prostate cancer is typically a slow-growing cancer that's essentially detectable by using a PSA blood test long before it spreads. And as a President Joe Biden presumably would be receiving these regular tests. According to his urologists, it's pretty much unheard of to get a diagnosis of stage 4 prostate cancer out of the blue in a situation like this. Even in poor areas without good health care, he says, it's the kind of thing that happens when patients don't get regular screenings for many years. And then he states that Biden may have had this cancer for a period of 5 to 10 years before he was in office. And that appears to be the consensus. As Stephen Quay, a prominent doctor and scientist, put it, quote, prostate cancer is the easiest cancer to diagnose when it first starts and to watch it progress to bone metastasis. The PSA blood test shows the rate of cancer cell growth. For even with the most aggressive form, it is a 5 to 7 year journey without treatment before it becomes metastatic, meaning it would be malpractice for this patient to show up and be first diagnosed with metastatic disease in May of 2025. It is highly unlikely that he was carrying a diagnosis of prostate cancer without his White House tenure, throughout his White House tenure, and the American people were uninformed. Now, in an interview with Reuters, Dr. Chris George, who serves as the medical director of Northwestern Health Network's cancer program, he offered his assessment. And he said, I would assume that the former president gets a very thorough physical every year. I would be interested to know what his PSA was the last time it was checked. It's sort of hard for me to believe that he's had a PSA within the past year, that he hadn't had one. That was normal. It's possible. It's definitely possible, but that would surprise me. Usually, prostate cancer doesn't, go full throttle like this too often. When it does, that's usually a bad sign. That's an aggressive cancer for sure, but it doesn't seem, it does seem odd to me. This is about as close as you'll get to a doctor who believes that the official narrative is plausible, but even he thinks they should have been checking Biden's PSA levels, and he wants to know what they were. Here's the problem. If you go back and pull up Biden's medical reports, you won't see anything about his PSA level. And at the moment, we have no indication of whether they were checking his PSA levels at all. In 2019, Biden's doctors reported that he had an enlarged prostate, but no cancer. You'd think that perhaps that might trigger some extra urgency for regular PSA screenings, but apparently not. Then in 2024, Biden's physician reported that he was a healthy, active, robust 81-year-old male who remains fit to successfully execute the duties of the presidency. But again, nothing about the PSA levels. There's also nothing in the report to indicate he was being treated in any way for cancer. At the same time, CNN just reviewed a doctor who stated that when prostate cancer is being treated, symptoms can include cognitive impairment and fatigue, which are both symptoms that Joe Biden obviously displayed during his campaign.
And that he's 82. How would that dictate how he and his medical team make a decision about the treatment options?
I think he's not my patient, but if I had a patient like him with all the medical stuff that he has, including whether it's the physical or the mental, you really have to take that into account because all these treatments do have potential side effects. One of the biggest side effects that I see in my patients that get these hormone treatments could be cognitive changes. So you have to kind of balance that. People can also get issues with fatigue and weight loss. But when he has stuff in his bones, he's also at higher risk for fractures. So it is a very sensitive conversation. But initially what we do is we try to get very aggressive in the treatments, and then either we pull back if he's not responding or if he's getting symptoms. But initially, it's a very aggressive intervention. It's like, all right, let's see what we can do. Yes, there's side effects, but right now, if it is in his bones, if we want to extend his quality of life or extend his life, then perhaps firing all the missiles in this case may be the better way to go, and then kind of retract as we need.
So these treatments can cause cognitive impairments, as you just heard. So that raises some more questions now, doesn't it? Do we know that Joe Biden was receiving any of these cancer treatments that fried his brain and made him so tired that, according to his own aides, he wasn't able to function after dark? At the moment, no, we don't. But we also don't have any reason to believe Biden's handlers when they say that he wasn't taking these treatments, especially given all of their other lies and given his behavior while in office. And that really would be the scandal of the century. Imagine if it turned out that Joe Biden was only senile because they were treating him for terminal cancer that they wouldn't disclose. At this point, you can't put it past any of these people. In any event, it is impossible to ignore the fact that they're floating this possibility on CNN just a couple of days before the release of Jake Tapper's new book, which goes in depth about Joe Biden's cognitive decline, and that presents yet another reason to doubt the official narrative, which is that Biden's cancer was suddenly discovered, and it looks a lot like they're releasing this diagnosis in order to change the subject and garner sympathy for Biden. In fact, David Axelrod has no problem in admitting that even. And it's a very thinly veiled command. He's essentially saying, now that we've told you Joe Biden was dying, please stop talking about how we've covered up his mental decline as well as his cancer. And of course, CNN and the other networks will follow David Axelrod's command, of course. And to be clear, saving the news of Joe Biden's cancer diagnosis for 2 days before the book release in order to change the subject and garner sympathy is diabolical. I've never seen anything so cynical in my life, but that's what we're doing. They'd rather you don't pay any attention to all of the evidence that they lied and deceived public for several years in one of the greatest scandals in American history. Let's take a trip back and remember just a few of these.
The stamina, physically and mentally, do you think to continue on even after 2024?
Don, you're asking me this question. Oh my gosh, he's the president of the United States. You know, I can't even keep up with it.
The most difficult part about a meeting with President Biden is preparing for it, because he is sharp, intensely probing, and detail-oriented and focused.
I can testify because I've been working very closely with this president for the past 2 years. I've been knowing him for 30 years. And I'm telling you, this guy's tough. He's smart. He's on his game.
Joe Biden has vision. He has knowledge. He has a strategic thinker.
The president is focused. He's detail-oriented. He's always thinking about the big picture.
He is engaging. He is capable. He has an incredible record as president.
And I'm often with him on foreign trips. He's at the top of his game.
So he has a vision. He has knowledge. He has judgment. He has a strategic thinking.
I met with the president, 5 or 6 weeks ago, and he seemed fine to me.
I have complete confidence in the president. I have watched him expertly guide meetings of staff and cabinet members. I could not have more confidence in the president.
I would just tell you that I meet frequently with the president, and every single time I meet with him, he is just fine.
But he is, again, knowledgeable, wise.
Incredibly sharp, incredibly probing, incredible command of the details.
He is sharp. He is on top of things.
There is nothing to these challenges, these suggestions that somehow he's not sharp and he's not capable.
We see Joe Biden up close. We know how attuned he is to the issue.
And you're going to see how smart he is and the experience he has.
I say his age is an asset.
Aha! He's wise.
Yes, he's wise. He has wisdom. He has experience.
And his experience, because of his age and his wisdom, has been invaluable to this country.
A lot of countries, people who've been in office a longer period of time are praised for their wisdom.
I have seen a lot of 72-year-olds not as capable as this 80-year-old.
It is hard for us to keep up with this president.
His mental acuity is great. It's fine. It's as good as it's been over the years. He's fine. All this right-wing propaganda that his mental acuity has declined is wrong.
And this kind of sense that he's not ready for this job is just a bucket of BS that's so deep, your boots will get stuck in.
Yeah, and who can forget this one?
But comparing that guy's mental state, I've said it for years now, he's cogent. But I undersold him when I said he was cogent. He's far beyond cogent. In fact, I think he's better than he's ever been. Intellectually, analytically, because he's been around for 50 years. And, I don't know if people know this or not, Biden used to be a hothead. Sometimes that Irishman would get in front of the reasoning. Sometimes he would say things he didn't want to say. This is... And I don't really, I don't really care. Start your tape right now because I'm about to tell you the truth. And F you if you can't handle the truth. This version of Biden, intellectually, analytically, is the best Biden ever. Not a close second. And I've known him for years. The Brzezinskis have known him for 50 years. If it weren't the truth, I wouldn't say it. And you.
Yeah.
But comparing...
That's the guy who just wrote the book, by the way. So they don't want you asking any questions about any of this. They genuinely believe that. Now that they've told us Joe Biden has cancer, all this will just go away. But it won't go away. Instead, it's just become a much more serious crisis. In fact, At this point, there are several questions that need to be answered immediately. First, when was Joe Biden actually diagnosed with cancer? Was he treated in any way for prostate cancer at any time while he was in office? If so, who knew about these treatments and participated in the cover-up? And did they secretly treat him, or did they not treat him because the only way to keep it hidden was to do nothing about it? Or did they want the disease to kill him quickly after his reelection so that Kamala could take over? We are well past the point where we can take any Democrat's word for any of this. Cable news hits on CNN aren't sufficient. At this point, we need Congress to step up and actually do something for a change. We need full congressional investigations into this cover-up, put people under oath, every staffer, Jill Biden, everyone. Whatever the case, it's now clear that their plan to engineer the first female president was to push through a cancer-ridden dementia patient, get him reelected by any means necessary, let him die, and then have her take over. That's undeniable at this point. It's the most ruthless, cold-blooded plot we've ever seen in American politics. These people are demons, like their counterparts in the final days of the Soviet Union. They obscured vital information that every American is entitled to. In fact, the Free Press reports that the administration staffers referred to Biden's close-knit team of top advisors as the Politburo. Yeah. So they knew what they were doing. They knew they were acting like Soviet puppet masters, and they're still doing it. They're refusing to answer the ultimate question that we simply must have an answer to, which is this: who was actually running the country for the past 4 years? Whoever it was, it certainly wasn't Joe Biden. These people are still out there. Some of them may be in the government right now. If not, they're certainly planning to return to power soon. And before that happens, every single one of them must be identified, prosecuted, and imprisoned like the traitors to this country that they are. And I would say that members of the propaganda media are just absolutely scrambling at this point. They almost don't know what to do. Brian Flood, he writes for Fox News, and he says that White House reporters who covered the Biden administration are speaking out about whether they were duped into thinking the president was mentally fit for office, and if West Wing staffers attempted to hide the truth from Americans. CNN's Jake Tapper and Axios reporter Alex Thompson's Original Sin, President Biden's Decline, Its Cover-Up, and Its Disastrous Choice to Run Again, was released just a few weeks ago and has created plenty of chatter among the White House press corps while putting the issue back at the forefront. The book details Joe Biden's mental acuity concerns while in office, according to the Biden White House, of lying to reporters and voters. Fox News senior White House correspondent Peter Doocy responded by posting multiple videos to X showing him questioning Biden and the White House about the then president's cognitive decline, only to be quickly dismissed. Other White House reporters found it odd that CNN is tied to the book, while some had strange feelings about whether there was truly a cover-up. One White House reporter truly believes the White House clearly tried to hide the truth from everyone. Quote, "This was a cover-up by any definition, but a quaxic one for the Biden team to have undertaken. For at the end of the day, this is only so much there is only so much a White House staff can do to shield the President of the United States from exposure to the press and the public. The cover-up had both private and public-facing dimensions. The White House reporter for Fox News Digital said that. And the reporter said the private dimensions included secretive strategizing and decision-making, while the public strategy featured brazen lies, such as video of Biden appearing confused, being chalked up as deep fakes or cheap fakes. Remember those? And the silencing of reporters who pressed the issue early on. Doocy and a handful of other bold reporters were regularly shut down by Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre if they dared to ask about the president's fitness for office. Quote, the subject that was denounced as so rude and fringy to ask about back then eventually emerged as a defining issue of the Biden presidency, said a White House reporter. A second White House reporter echoed the thoughts of the Daily Show, host Jon Stewart, who blasted CNN for relentlessly promoting a book about news they should have told you was news a year ago for free. Sources are always, this is the quote, sources are always more eager to talk after the fact, but it's not a good look that CNN, a heavy hitter with plenty of weight to challenge the White House as the decline happened, barely scratched the surface of the story that Tapper now reports. Quote, late work still deserves half credit, though, is what they added. A third White House reporter initially believed the 82-year-old Biden was merely aging or perhaps suffering from COVID side effects and doesn't think the press was culpable. Quote, it's one of those things. The guy is old. He speaks like an old person, and it's getting more pronounced as time goes by. Quote, I noticed personally a dramatic difference between when he took office and the start of the second year. I suspected and wondered if it might be because of COVID and the after effects of COVID. He had it twice, and I think, and I know it's been reported that a brain fog kind of thing can happen after you've had it. I left it at that, they continued. And saying, I remember a very different Joe Biden in 2014, 2015, and he was a decade younger, so that makes sense. The third White House reporter doesn't get it. He doesn't get the notion that journalists should have been able to uncover the truth about his declining health at the moment. Quote, how exactly do you report that? If you're a White House reporter, you have the responsibilities to explain what happened that day. Like in any White House, there's usually something happening every single day, they said. Noting that reporting on Biden's mental acuity concerns would be a major enterprising story. People are not going to confirm mental stuff at all. Not likely going to tell you what he's like in private or in Wilmington, because that makes him look bad, they said. Now the Biden White House didn't leak. It just didn't. So if you want to go after that story, you're going to spend weeks on it, and you might not get anything. And in the meantime, you're not doing other things. It sounds like an excuse to me, doesn't it to you? The same White House reporter is puzzled that Jean-Pierre has taken so much heat for regularly insisting Biden was fit for office. Quote, to the extent that she says he's more energetic than I am, that's just silly. And she probably shouldn't have said that. On the other hand, to have her come out and say, oh, no, he's actually incapable of doing the job and ought to resign, well, that's not realistic. He said, I mean, come on. You can't expect the chief of staff to say this guy can't do the job. The third White House reporter isn't sure Biden's age impacted his job performance and believes a lot of his shortcomings were simply policy issues. Margaret Chadbourne covers the White House as a Cheddar correspondent with a seat in the briefing room and is a WHCA member. She believes the entire Biden saga has hurt trust in the media because Americans are asking, well, what was missed and why was it missed? She says, should they have done more research? I think there is a whole timeline that the media and the reporters need to look through, not just Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson writing a book. Chadbourne, who had been covering Biden on and off since 2005, said he was always affable and always came alive interacting with voters. But as his legacy is defined, she believes there is anger among Americans over what people perceive as misinformation about his health. Quote, not as a media critic, but as a journalist, a political reporter, we need to see what was there that we perhaps missed. Yeah, missed? Well, the first White House reporter who spoke on anonymity believes that the truth will eventually come out. He says that we will learn more about all of this as time goes on. First, in aid memoirs, where they will, for money, traffic the pitiable incidences and sad details they knew about at the time and helped conceal. And secondly, through archival disclosures, as we get our hands on the White House, memorandums and emails and texts that will show the day-to-day mechanics and the cover-up, and maybe answer the question of who was running the country. So, yeah, that definitely begs the question: who was president during Biden's presidency? Who was running the auto pen? Who was the one making the decisions? And, I don't think we have that answer at this point, but I would like to know, and I think we deserve to know, and I would love to hear what you think on it. Of course, you can always get a hold of us at uncommonsensepodcast.com. Yeah, we're on YouTube now. Please go ahead and share, like, and all that. And thank you for listening. This podcast is a production of Morganite Communications.